We are all ready to go. I have my image printed out. This was a digital image from Tiddly Inks, and I printed it out on Express It blending card. I've already trimmed it down so it's a smaller piece of cardstock. And I am ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and start with her skin and hair and move down, get her strawberry and little dress, and then I'm gonna add her onto a card. So I am gonna do most of the coloring in fast forward. I know that's not always the best way to show things, but I will make sure to either voice over or include the colors that I am using. I will get those written on the video so you can see what I'm using and when I'm switching over. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start right in with the skin. So the first marker I'm pulling out is an E000, and I'm getting all the skin areas. I'm being careful around her glasses, at least for now, and getting those little skinny arms and hands and legs. E00 is what I'm going to use to add some shading to the face. She has a very round face, so it's shading for a sphere. I keep the shading under the glasses very minimal. I go back with the 000 to blend, and then I'm coming in with an E93 just to add some rosiness to her cheeks and blending that back in as well. I've realized that my E00 didn't make it onto the hands and legs, and so I've gone back and added shading for those areas with my E00. Next is hair, and I'm going to start this with my E21, and I'm going to go ahead and fill in the entire hair area with a nice rich base. At the start I was holding up a marker, a YR24. Originally I had planned on using that, but you're going to notice as I work that I decide to not use that marker. So you can ignore that one from the original holding. I'm going to move on to an E23 instead, and I'm going to flick outward from the base of those little funky ponytails, and then also flick inward. I want to show that texture throughout that space. And then I'm going to show the hair pulling back into that ponytail. And so I'm working my flicks in that direction. With an image like this, I have to continually turn my paper to make sure that my hand is going to be able to do the flicks in the direction I want. And it's really important on this little image with that hair to show which direction it's going. And so I do a lot of turning. E25 is next. It's going to flick in the same exact areas and obviously a little bit less. I'm going to apologize for my head peeking into the video here once in a while as I'm getting close to my image. Now I didn't flick back down from the outer edges of the ponytail with this color. I'm just flicking from the bangs back towards that hairband and then also from that hairband out onto the ponytail. Big flick there that goes right out of the lines, but I'll correct that later. E27 is last. It's my darkest color, so I use it pretty sparingly. But exact same areas from the bang line up into the hair tie and then from the hair tie out. But it is, hopefully you can see, it's really showing the direction of that hair and showing her fun little hairdo. So now I'm going to break out my Colorless Blender and start pushing that color. Remember, it's not an eraser. I'm pushing it back towards the hair. It's not totally gone yet, but it will be eventually. B63 is next. I'm going to just fill in the frames. They are so skinny that I'm just coloring them in. Again, with my 0, my Colorless Blender, give that one more pass. It's getting fainter, but I'm letting it dry in between. The dress is next, and I'm going to use a series of BGs. BG000 on the shoes and dress, then BG11 to add some shading. I'm going to add a little bit of some movement to the dress and some folds just for interest, and then I'm coming in with a BG13 to re-emphasize those areas. BG11 to start blending those areas back in, and add a little bit of shading onto the shoes, which I didn't get to at the start, and a BG000 to smooth out the dress, and a BG13 to add that last little bit of layer. The shoes are so small that they just don't need a whole lot of blending. one last time with that colorless blender, and I've pushed it back into the hair so you really can't see the mistake. And on to the strawberry. R22 is what I'm going to start with. If you've worked with your reds at all, you know reds tend to push outward as you color with them. So I am going to, knowing that I'm going to do a lot of layers, I'm going to leave some white at the edges around my fingers and around the edges of the strawberry. R24 is next. This color is going to go ahead and work into those white areas and flick onto the R22, leaving a highlight. And if you couldn't tell yet, I've got a little bit of a light source coming in from the right hand upper corner. You can see that more on the strawberry than anywhere else right now. R29 is next. It's one of my favorite red colors. It's going to come in from that bottom edge and create some more roundness to our strawberry. I'm being real careful as I go around those little fingertips because that red's going to start bleeding out. And R59 is last, and that's going to push that all the way back, a beautiful deep red berry. So blending those colors back real lightly. I'm going to keep as light a hand as I can with my R29, my R24, and finishing with my R22. Next is the little top on that strawberry. I'm starting with a G21 and just filling in the leaves. G24 is next. These two colors are really close together, so it's going to be hard to see where I'm aiming, but I'm keeping in mind my light source in that upper right corner. G28 is my darkest shade that I'm using, and I'm going back to blend then. G24 and G21. I'm going to come in to create a cast shadow underneath my little figure with C1. Now, I could just add a touch, but sometimes with an image like this, I like the challenge of trying to give it a little bit of the shape that might be thrown onto the ground. So I've got a separate leg and then one that is kind of arabesquing to the back. So I know it's not touching down, so notice that that back shadow doesn't actually touch the foot. Lastly, I'm going to come back in with some opaque white, and I'm going to drop a little bit of color onto each one of those little strawberry seeds to pop them back out. Notice I did not try to avoid them with my reds. There was no way I was going to try to color around those little dots. But the opaque white is a great way to come back in and just pop those out so they really stand out, and it's a fun addition to the image. The other place I'm going to add my opaque white is a small reflective curve on the glasses. I hit the upper right corner and lower left corner.
All colored up. So now I am going to gather some card supplies and I'm going to add her onto a fun summer card. Now if you haven't recognized already, I've only done one other card for you, but the cards that I produce are very simple. They're very quick, very easy, single, 1 or 2 layers of pattern paper with a couple of embellishments, and this one is no different. I have never proclaimed to be a grand card maker, but it gives you a fun idea how to finish this image off. All right. I have all my pieces assembled. I've done one thing to my image. I have gone ahead and rounded the corners off and I trimmed it down just a little bit. Not a whole lot, just a little bit, but I didn't feel like she needed to be quite so tall and narrow. So I've got her trimmed and I've got her corners rounded. I did already adhere this particular pattern paper onto some white cardstock. I felt like the orange against the aqua was just a little too strong, so I wanted to have that break of the white in between. And I'm going to go ahead and assemble all my pieces. And that is it, a fun summer card to send off to a friend or family member. You would probably notice as I flip the pieces over, I reuse paper a lot and try to get the most out of my paper. So the white cardstock that backs this pattern paper is actually 2 smaller pieces. I had printed some images out on my Express blending card that I ended up not using. And so I actually did print this image on the second side. So there was an image on the back. I am a firm believer in not wasting if I can, and especially with paper that's a little more expensive. So you can see it worked just fine actually coloring on the other side. I hope you enjoyed today's image and had a good time watching some fast forward coloring. I hope you will join me again. Have a happy and colorful day and week.